Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, May 31st. I'm Donna Will, Professional Development Coordinator for the Maryland Department of Health's Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to the Data Collection Tool question and answer sessions. And before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. There are two options to hear the webinar, by computer and by phone. And if you look at the panel interface on your right labeled audio, you can click either computer or phone to switch for the best option. Questions can be typed in the question or chat box in the webinar panel. And I'm going to kick it off to Ben London. Good afternoon, Ben.
Good afternoon, everyone. What we'll do is I'm going to give Leslie Lee permissions to share her screen, and we can go forward from there. Does that sound good? All right.
Yeah.
1 second. I will do it right now.
You're going to give her sharing?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Did that work?
Yeah, it worked. There we go.
Okay, this is Leslie from Optimus. I want to make sure I can see the fiscal year 25 data collection tool on screen.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so last time we had gone through all the tabs and talked through what the intentions of each tab are. Just to point out some things based on some feedback from the last call, we had clarified some directions in the tool, and I believe a new version was sent out. None of the cells or any of the actual data collection piece of it has been changed, but some of the directions that are attached to the headers have been updated to be a little more clear. So if you've already filled out the tool, thank you very much. And nothing has changed, and so you don't need to go back and adjust anything, but we've just sent out clarifying directions. Since we went over the tool last time, I think this time we'll just take questions unless somebody would like us to review the tool again from the beginning to end.
This is Caleb. Yeah, we're not really sure if this is a new group of people or if this is the same set of people that attended last time. But if you have questions or if you want us to just give broad overviews, just go ahead and enter that into the chat and let us know what you'd like to hear, what questions we can answer, any of that sort of material. Maybe you could just give us a very quick overview, Leslie, while people are formulating their questions.
Sure. So, like I said, nothing about the actual document has changed, but some of the instructions have been updated. The email to return your collection tool is to rrag.dda@maryland.gov. Just a reminder that the tool is, the deadline to submit the tool is close of business on Friday, June 9th. And then the second tab here is just providing information on which billing system your organization is part of, and just some basic information for us to be able to cross-reference. The first tab in blue is the program support and facility tab, where we're asking for the total dollars that you spent on DSP wages in fiscal year 22, the total cost that was spent for program support and the total cost spent for facility. And under each column, there is a little more detail around what information we're looking for specifically. So you can see that DSP wages is split out into billable versus non-billable, and we've done our best to separate out what we think would qualify for billable versus non-billable. And this is in line with the general ledger tool that the Hilltop Institute has been working on. But this tool is separate from the general ledger tools, just as a distinction. However, we've worked to make sure that all of the definitions are as consistent as possible with it, to make sure that we collect the same data moving forward. Then we have on the next tab the training and turnover, where we're looking at just the count of employees who need the training that started in fiscal year 22, count of employees who need ongoing training that were already employed prior to fiscal year 22, and then the number of hours worked by DSPs, essentially, who needed the training. And we know that every provider calculates their turnover slightly differently. So we have a section where you can include your calculated turnover, and then providing any comments on how you make that calculation would be very insightful for us. On tab 3, we have a just a place to put input here, where in the past we've talked about perhaps changing the group structure in the day habilitation services. So currently the structure is there's 4 rates that you can bill: 2-to-1, 1-to-1, small group, and large group. And we've talked in the past about accounting for costs appropriately, and perhaps these group sizes are not ideal depending on how providers render the services. And some solutions in the past we've talked about is having discrete rates, so having a rate for every single group size, so group size 2, 3, 4, 5. And we've heard that that is extremely burdensome administratively. And so we're trying to see if there needs to be a change to the group size for day habilitation, or if providers are comfortable with the way that the rates are currently structured. So this is just a place for you to input that feedback here. The 4th tab is when we propose to look at information for program support and facility. Max had proposed a alternative data collection tool template. And so this is their template that they proposed. It's a little bit more detailed than what we're asking for in the 1st tab. And if you're able to fill this out, this would be helpful information for us as well. The way that this is laid out is we have in the top, we have the percentage of your clients that are served in the geographic differential area, whether your billing system is based on LTSS or PCIS. And then the directions for each of these cells are on the right-hand side in column J on what they're looking for within each of the rows here. In all of our tabs, we have a section to put in notes or comments on any questions or assumptions or any additional information you think would be helpful for us. We read all of the comments, and it's helpful to put context behind what the numbers you're sharing with us are. So we appreciate any additional details you're able to provide, or if you are unsure of how you bucketed something, putting the comment in there will be helpful for us as well. And then we have an additional section for comments. For any, again, additional context that you don't feel fits within the individual tabs, you can provide that comment here. And then, as mentioned, the cost categories, we have a tab that defines all the cost categories, what to include or exclude. And so just to make sure that we have consistency as much as possible. So I'll pause here for any questions or if Caleb has anything to add.
Thank you, Leslie. Our basic advice for any question is to fill it out to the best of your ability. Give us the most detail that you can. Add comments for context. If, for example, you aren't able to split out billable and non-billable wages, feel free to input the combined wages. If you can't split it out by service, feel free to put the total in. We do want as much detail as possible, but if you're making assumptions, please be explicit about what assumptions you're making if you're trying to split costs and you don't have that breakdown directly in your data. If you need to make assumptions to split data, please let us know what assumptions you're making, because we're trying to standardize that as much as possible across all of the providers. At this point, Ben, have you been receiving questions? Because we cannot see the questions or chat. So if you've been receiving questions, perhaps you could share those.
Hi there. This has been currently at this time, I haven't received any serious questions. Oh wait, excuse me for a second. Well, I'm sorry. Let me just get organized. If you can give me a minute. Okay. So from reading over the questions right now, it looks like we have quite a few new people who aren't familiar with the tool. So I think the broad overview is a great idea. Let's see, I have a question right here. What is a billable wage versus non-billable wage? Can you give a little bit more explanation? That'd be possible.
Sure. So we're defining billable wages as any wages paid for the direct support services rendered. So anything that includes billed hours for DDA services. So non-billable wages would be things like transportation, program support, any emergency closures if the wages are still paid, but you're unable to bill that time to DDA, and other wage costs that are not included in the direct service rendered. Does that help?
And as Leslie's showing here, there's a little pop-up comments on the headers for each of these columns to give you more information. So when you hover your mouse over the column header, it'll give you a description.
Either Jennifer or Robert, but the training data, only employees at the start of the fiscal year 2022 or all employees hired throughout the year?
So we're looking for all employees hired throughout the year that needed training. And then the ongoing training would be employees who were hired prior to fiscal year 22 that needed any ongoing training. So our intent is to capture how much time DSPs spend throughout the year in training. And so if you hire them mid-year and they need to start training, we would also need that information.
Awesome. For the billable hours, is that based on Appendix K flexibilities? Meaning in FY22, we would apply a smaller number of hours as billable. Is that correct?
I'm not certain we're familiar with that.
Yes, I don't know if I'm following the question. Sorry, Ben, can you repeat that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the billable hours, is that based on Appendix K flexibilities? Meaning in FY22, we would apply a smaller number of hours as billable.
I think we can look into this question some more, but I think what we're trying to capture here is the total costs that were spent towards DSP wages that are billable to DDA. So the total dollars that you spend paying wages, rendering services to members would go into the billable wages. But we can look into what Appendix K defined.
Sure. There was a follow-up question to that. Maybe this can provide a little bit more clarity. If in FY22 we ran programs for only 3 hours per day, that would be the basis for the billable wage calculation. Is that correct?
Yes, and please include a comment explaining that so that if we need to make any upward adjustment moving forward, we can do it consistently rather than having providers individually project the hours, if that makes sense.
Sure. There are a few more questions if we wanted to answer them right now, or
yeah.
Okay. Hello, is filling out this tool a DDA required action like an audit or a licensure renewal, or is this a survey? I might have to, I might make a note of that, and I could get back to you on that if we don't know that off the top.
I can start, but Jennifer, I don't know if you want to jump in at all, but this is not required, I believe. However, we are looking to make changes to the day habilitation rate based off of this data. And if we don't receive significant amount of data, we're unable to make data-informed decisions. And so we highly encourage you to please fill out the tool. We appreciate that it is time consuming, and we are really grateful that you take that the provider community is taking the time to fill this out. Without this information, without a significant number of responses, we will be not able to make those data informed decisions to help improve or adjust the rates based on what is, you know, the current costs that are out there for the provider community.
I think that's accurate, although we'll need to confirm 100% with DDA, but I just want to echo what you just said, Leslie, for the providers on the line. If you, especially if you are concerned about what you're getting paid for the services that are covered in this survey, the more information you can provide us, the better able we will be to evaluate what changes could potentially be made. So it's really in everyone's best interest to fill this out if you're able to.
I have a, let's see. I have a question right here that says, would you classify vacation and training wages for DSPS as non-billable?
So the wages here are including hours that DSP works in order to render the services, whether it's indirect or direct. The vacation and benefits would go under ERE or employee-related expenses. So that wouldn't be included here. If you need more detail around what to include or exclude in the direct care staff DSP wages, they're under the cost categories defined tab. There is specific items that are defined in order to include that. And so vacation, employment benefits are all under ERE here.
I have another question that just came in. Perhaps I missed this, but if a provider was providing traditional DH services during the fiscal year 22, how would a provider submit this data based on these new DH group sizes?
So Caleb, I don't know if you were going to respond to that.
No, feel free, Leslie.
Okay, so we're very aware that under the PCIS2 system, there isn't this large, or there isn't a clean split between these services. So if you are able to split out the 4 services, you know, and leave a comment on how you were able to split that out, that would be appreciated. However, if you're not able to discern between the 4 services, you're welcome to fill in the total line, which is these lines in yellow here, and just give us your total costs for day habilitation overall.
I'll take this opportunity too to stress that when we look at this data, if you can do your best to distinguish between data that is missing or that you can't calculate versus data that is 0. If a value is 0 and you know it's 0, go ahead and put a 0 in there. But if it's something that you can't split out or you don't know the number, then you can leave it blank or put missing in or NA or something like that. But if you know it's 0, put 0 in. If it can't be calculated or you don't know its value, leave it blank.
Okay, 2 more questions have just came in. Did I understand you say this is not required? I was under the impression it was required by all providers.
So we can't really speak for DDA, but what I believe Robert said in the last meeting last week was that it was not required, but highly encouraged. And we can't make data-driven changes to the rates without this data. So everyone is highly encouraged to fill this out to the best of your ability. And if you can't fill out the really specific details that are on like tab 4, if you can put in the simpler data here on tab 2, or rather tab 1, you know, as much data as you can give us would be appreciated. We are looking to make changes to the program supports and facility rates in particular this cycle. If we don't get enough data, then we can't make changes in this cycle.
Sure. Jennifer, did you have anything, any thoughts on the question?
The exact same thing I said the last time. It's in everyone's best interest to provide as much data as you can, so that we can make the best, most informed decisions possible about these rates going forward.
Awesome. Great. I had another question come in. The question's regarding turnover and number of employed staff is this specific to staff who are working with individuals under day?
So this one here.
Funding stream?
Oh, sorry. No, this is we will be applying training and turnover to all of the rates. And so if you have any data on any DSP or employee who required training in order to be able to work with the members, then please include that here.
That is currently all the questions right now. We can, oh, 2 more questions, okay. Let's see, to clarify all numbers from residential and community services.
Yes, so we understand that a lot of employees and a lot of providers do multiple streams of services. And so for the training and turnover, we're looking for all employees that needed training or ongoing training.
Great. We have another follow-up question. So how will you proceed in establishing adequate rates if this data is not sufficient because it is not required?
That is why we need your help. Especially, I see this message came from Karen, who is one of our RREG members. So we're very grateful for all the feedback that the RREG provides, but especially for RREG members, anything you can do to spread the word about this to your colleagues, to your fellow providers, and explain to them how important it is. That is how we will get to the place of being able to make these data-informed decisions. And without data, we can't make changes. So, especially for our RREG members, we need your help and support in spreading the word about how important this is.
There's a question just going back to Appendix K. Is it understood that billable wages for the period you are requesting, FY22, would be based on 3 hours per day of service for fiscal year 22, but going forward will be based on a 6 hours per day service?
Yes, we will be taking that into account. What we want to do is reflect the true cost that providers experienced in fiscal year 22. And then any adjustments we make will be made uniformly across providers so that, you know, different providers are not making different assumptions, so we can get as consistent of data as possible. So please don't include any assumptions around that. Please just include your actual costs for fiscal year 22. And then if you want to put into the comments, you know, that you're concerned around that change that's coming for the upcoming fiscal year, please do so. That's helpful context for us. But please don't make those assumptions in your data. Please just include what your actual costs were for fiscal year 22.
Is the deadline to submit firm?
Unfortunately, yes, because we are under a tight deadline for completing the rates and making sure that the budget timeline is adhered to. So unfortunately, the date deadline is firm.
Let's see. You have mentioned day and res. Do you also want personal supports, employment services, and other services included?
So for the program support and facility tabs, we're looking for day habilitation specifically. It's only in training the training tab, the turnover tab, we want the total number of employees across all your programs that require training and ongoing training.
As an RREG member, I cannot stress how important this data will be at looking at your day rates. Please take the time to complete as much as you can, make the effort, even though it is not required. This is from a comment from Donna. Here's one more question. Is this specific to day? Why do you need training for the whole organization?
So initially this training tab was meant to be a separate collection because we want to update the training components of the rates. But we didn't want to overburden you with a ton of emails asking for all these different data points. So we included this tab in the data collection tool, but the training is going to be applied to all services as an update in that training component. And so it's important for us to get a full view of what the turnover rates for the various providers are.
Is the question asking for the total number of hours paid to staff and training?
The question in row 7 is referring to total hours that need to be paid to any employee who needed training. So even if it's billable or non-billable, or if they were, working on, paperwork, we want the total number of hours that employees worked that had training involved. And just to give a little more context to that, the intention of question, or the intention in row 7 is to figure out the denominator. So let's say you have 10 employees who needed 40 hours of training for the whole year. That would be 400 hours, and then we want to find how many hours they worked in total for the entire year, so we can divide that out and get the percentage of training relative to the total number of hours that need to be, or that are worked on average.
We have a follow-up question. Am I right to assume you only want data for the DDA specific training, not any internal org specific training?
That's correct. Yeah, we want employees who need to go through the DDA training.
Here's another one. Can you highlight the changes / clarifications made to the instructions in the revised version of the tool?
Sure. So the only changes really were on the instructions tab. We just replaced the original email, which I believe was to Robert's inbox, to the RREG specific inbox for returning the tool. And then under program support and facilities, all we did was, as Caleb had pointed out, when you highlight the header of these columns here, there's a little more detail around what constitutes billable versus non-billable, and then the specific cost categories that we see in the final tab of this tool, just highlighting the item numbers that the columns correspond to for program support to help clarify what goes where. So as I mentioned earlier, none of the outlook of the tool changed. All of the columns and cells are still asking for the same information, but based on feedback from last time, we just wanted to clarify some directions on here.
If we have a follow-up question to the back from the total number of hours for staff and training. But you are not asking for the number of hours paid when they were in training?
So the rows 5 and 6 are asking for the count of employees, because we understand that there's been some updates to training, and so we are working with DDA to figure out how many hours of training are required by DDA. If we have the count of employees that go through the training, we can then take that count and multiply by the new required hours from DDA. And then row 7 is asking for the total number of hours worked in the year, because again, we're looking for that denominator. So we're looking to see if, for instance, on average, we know that a year full-time employees work approximately 2,080 hours. That is just taking like a 40-hour work week times the number of weeks and accounting for vacation, etc. And so we want to know what the actual total hours paid to employees are for fiscal year 22. We don't need hours spent in training, because we can take the count of employees and calculate that using the new required number of hours. Is that helpful in clarifying your question?
If we use the number of hours that you that they were in training in 2022, it would match the changes that are being proposed going forward for the training matrix. So we're going to use the proposed training matrix and multiply it by the number of employees, and then divide by an estimate of their total number of hours per year, recognizing some of them are part-time or haven't worked the whole year. And then that gives us that component. How much time, what percentage of their time in the year were they spent in training? And obviously we have to account for new employees that require more training versus employees that have been there a year and only require recurrent training.
We had another question come in. Can you reiterate what is meant by provider calculated turnover? You mentioned the denominator. The denominator. Is this a fraction you are looking for, or do you mean turnover as in people who leave the organization?
So for the provided calculated turnover, we're looking for the percentage of people who leave the agency. So we've heard in the past that, you know, on average, year over year, we see a churn of about 50%, but we need the data to verify that. Currently in the rate model, we've built in 39% as a turnover. And so we're hearing, like I said, from providers that that percentage is actually higher. And so we want to know, what is your agency's turnover year over year? And if you can provide any comments on how you calculated that number, that would be helpful context for us as well.
Did we have more questions, Ben?
It looks like we're still just waiting for any more questions to come in. Is there anything else you would like to cover while we have some downtime?
If you think of additional questions after this Q&A is over, you can always send those questions to the RAG email that is on the first tab under instructions there. If you have additional questions, you're welcome to send them there and we'll try to respond to them in a timely manner.
And I just want to add, like, we know that this is time consuming and we appreciate any information that you are able to provide us, and just stressing again that this is an extremely important part of the process to make sure that the rates accurately reflect the costs that the provider community is experiencing. And so the more information you're able to provide us, the better informed of decisions we can make. So we really appreciate you taking the time to ask these really thoughtful questions and doing your best to fill out this tool as best as possible.
I had a question a little bit further ago. Maybe either Donna or Jennifer can help me with it. Was the previous discussion recorded? Jennifer, were there any thoughts about posting the sessions online?
I'm not sure, but we can certainly go back and look into that. I think I had a conflicting meeting at the last session, so I'm not sure what was done, and also not 100% familiar with DDA's processes for posting things. But I think if we can make it available, we certainly will do that.
All right. So currently at this time, it looks like we've covered everybody's questions. If we can wait a little bit longer to see if anything else comes in to make sure that we can cover our bases. If either Leslie or Caleb, if you had anything further you wanted us to talk about for this presentation, feel free. Otherwise, we can end this a little bit early.
Yeah, I think we don't have anything else, but as Caleb had said, if you, as you're filling this out, think of any other questions or have any other comments or clarification questions, please feel free to email the rag.dda@maryland.gov, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. And again, thank you very much for taking the time to fill out this tool, because it's a very, very important process, part of the process to review the rates for fiscal year 25.
Oh, I have one last question. Where can we find the most recent tool?
I believe it was sent out a week ago. However, we can follow up with DDA to make sure that it gets shared out, or there's a place to share it. I did mention that if you're working with the older version of the tool, none of the cells or any of the data points are different. It's just some of the directions have been clarified. So you should still be able to fill out the tool, but we will work with DDA to make sure that the most recent tool has been shared.
Thank you so much, everyone. Ben, if you don't have anything additional.
Sorry, I cut out. No, I think as long as we've answered everybody's questions, I think we should be all set for today. I want to thank everybody for coming out and providing all of the helpful questions for today. And if there's anything further, please feel free to get in contact with us, and we'll be able to address any questions you might have.
All right. Goodbye,
Thanks,
everyone.
All right.
Have a good day.
Thank you.